My name's Don. This is the third video in a video series of 3. We have a couple of exciting things to tell you about. This particular deck build actually extends to a 4th and final video. Sometimes when we start a project, we actually do a little bit more than what we thought we were going to do. In this case, we did the cedar ceiling for this builder. Stay tuned for the next video. It turns out absolutely beautiful. I know you hear it all the time, but it really does help. Please hit the like button, drop a comment, and if you like what you're seeing, please consider subscribing. In the area we are in, building codes allow for the use of lag bolts, but they also allow for coated structural screws, and that's what we're using here. Sometimes we use a 3.5 inch, and sometimes we use a 5 inch. It depends on what we need to do. To hold the outside rims and beams together, we're going to use a 3.5 inch. To mount a deck post, we typically use 5 inch. We divided this deck build video into 3 separate videos, but they actually slightly overlap. Sometimes building a deck is somewhat fluid. For example, we needed some 10-foot deck post as well as 8-foot post. Unfortunately, the material takeoff was just for the 8-foot post. So, we needed several additional deck boards to replace some warped and damaged ones, as well as the additional 10-foot post. We didn't discover this until we arrived and began planning our workflow. So, we just ordered the materials we needed and moved on to what we could build. That's why things seem a little out of order. So back to this video. We're going to install the 6x6 post and the top rails. If you haven't had a chance to see the other videos, look for the first and second videos in this series.
Top. Okay, so we're gonna need a big old shim in the bottom when we get to that point. Push out a little more. Hang on. Okay, so. Cut that too, don't I? Cut an inch out of it or something.
The ideal way to install these posts is to install the post first, then cut the deck board to fit. We didn't have the post or any additional deck boards at the time, so we installed what we had. Now it's been hot, and the deck boards are beginning to dry out. When this happens, the area of wood around the screw closes over top of the screw. If we actually remove these deck boards right now, that area would break away and damage the board. That would cause us to install a new deck board. We knew that was going to happen, but we also knew we could just use a multi-tool and cut these post openings out. We are just about ready to install the rails. We just have a few things to tidy up here. First, we need to get the remaining post installed. Then, we need to snap a line across the decking and cut off the excess deck boards. That gives us a nice, clean, straight line on the outside edge. Well, now it's time to start the rails. We were given some very specific instructions prior to starting the deck rails. Keep in mind, we must meet local building codes on this build. But we are not installing the balusters. This is not typical for us, but easy to work through. The baluster installers need exactly 26 5/8 inches as a spacing. When I cut the 6x6 post, I accounted for the 1 inch of decking, 3.5 inches of spacing between the decking and the bottom rail, a regular 3.5 inch bottom rail, 26 5/8 spacing for the balusters, a top rail of 3.5 inches, and a 1 inch top cap rail. I also allowed enough spacing in the event a 2x6 cap rail was used in lieu of a 5/4 decking. This is a quick process, as long as you use some blocks as a template. I cut 4 2x4 blocks of wood that we will use to build these railings. 2 of the blocks will be 26 5/8, and the other 2, well, they can be between 4 and 6 inches because they're going to be used on their side as the 3.5 inch bottom spacing. Now, as we build the rails, we are using those 2x4 blocks to space the bottom rail off the decking. We will install the bottom rail, and then we will space the top rail on each side using the 26 5/8 block. We will then install the top rail on top of the 26 5/8 block, and then the cap rail on top of the top rail. That's going to keep all of our spacing exactly where we want it to be. Now that you're completely confused, let's just complicate it some more. To measure the rail, we measure between the bottom of the post. We always want to keep the bottom rail measurements identical to the top rail measurements. If they're not the same, then we need to fix it. Now, sometimes that can't be avoided. For example, let's say one of the posts that supports weight, called a bearing post, might have a small bow to it. We can't correct that. In that case, we measure the top and we measure the bottom. We cut those measurements. On this deck build, every top and bottom rail was exactly the same measurement. We touched on it earlier, but in the area that we build in, we do have building codes. Keep in mind, your area most likely has building codes as well. You could have a code for minimum height of your railings, minimum and maximum height for a handrail, and you also may have a code for the maximum spacing between balusters. Some areas have codes that define how much weight and pressure a railing must be able to support. Different building codes and different areas have different ways of writing those codes. Before you begin a project like this, make sure you check with your local building department. Even if you're doing a building repair or a deck repair, sometimes those repairs require a permit, and sometimes those repairs require you to bring things up to the current building codes. That's just something to keep in mind. Sit back and enjoy a song while we finish up on the railings.
My heart is beating to your drum, and I'm blinded by the the sunshine in your eyes. Not thinking twice, am I this down? Although I know you're all I want. How could I crave something so bad? My sweaty palms reveal a warning I should hear. But I don't care, you drive me mad. I'll ignore the truth and run to you. So we could drive away. You'll hear me say everything is gonna be okay. I don't need nobody else. Obsessed with you, trying to stop me, but I'm under your spell. Can't help myself. You know too well I need you close. Can't help myself. Trying to stop me, but I'm under your spell. Can't help myself. Trying to stop me, but I'm under your spell. And suddenly I'm by your side. 'Cause I'm out of things to explain how I feel. It's better to enjoy the ride. I feel at home, never alone. My friends are asking me if I've left the planet 'cause I seem high all the time. They think I'm in a film noir, but my impression is that I'm in heaven. So we could drive away. You'll hear me say everything is gonna be okay. I don't need nobody else. Obsessed with you, trying to stop me, but I'm under your spell. Can't help myself. You know too well I need you close. Can't help myself. Trying to stop me, but I'm under your spell. Can't help myself. Trying to stop me, but I'm under your spell. Can't help myself. Trying to stop me, but I'm under your spell. Did someone put something in my dream? The world is spinning in my head. When you hold me, it feels so soothing. You're like a story I know so well. Can't help myself.